the students from different faculties of KDU, representatives of different faculties are very warmly welcome for this third lecture on the program on cultural linkages towards an Asian ideology. So my topic today is the English language and cultural linkages towards an Asian ideology and beyond. So the English language and cultural linkages towards an Asian ideology I have put within quotation marks because of a special reason. The reason is that we talk about an Asian ideology and we talk about the link with that, with the English language, which is a Western language. So that is why in the title itself I have put it within inverted marks. And also this word beyond has a certain meaning which you will discover later. So in this presentation, in this lecture or the discussion, I'm going to cover these areas. This is just an overview of what I will be trying to discuss with you all this evening. First thing that I will do is to give you an introduction to the basic concepts that will be recurring during my lecture. And then, that is very important for you to know the basic concepts, because I know that you are representing disciplines like medicine, engineering, IT, etc. So you may not know, some of you may not be very familiar with the concept that we are talking about. When we talk about culture, cultural linkages, ideologies, etc. And then secondly, we will be discussing about what is called imperialist project and the English language. Imperialist means the colonial, the people who were dominating us years back, and their project and the English language. Then thirdly, we will discuss about post-colonial project and the English language. That is after the colonial period, the project, what we identify as the post-colonial project, and its link with the English language. And then we talk about the world Englishes and new literatures. Then the globalization and the English language. Then we will be moving on to a new area, that is Pan-Asianism versus Eurocentrism. We will discuss what they are later on. And then commonalities of cultures and ideologies. Various cultures and ideologies, what is common about them. And then Sri Lanka's contribution towards an alternative ideology and the role of the English language. So with that, I will conclude the presentation. Hope that this presentation will make some sense for you to have an awareness about culture, cultural linkages, Asian ideology, Western ideology, etc. Sometimes they may be heard as Greek for some of you at the beginning, but they are really interesting. Right. Now, the introduction to basic concepts. Now, the first concept that I want to discuss with you is ideology. Now, some of you, those who are interested in this topic, may have tried to sort of find what this word means. Some of you may know it, ideology. Ideology is identified as a set of ideas that an economic or political system is based on. A certain economic system or a certain political system of a country, of a region, that is based on. Set of ideas, not just one idea. That is, a collective set of ideas is known as an ideology. In another definition, it could be identified as a set of beliefs held by a particular group that influences the way people behave. So, set of beliefs, a belief system. It may be in a country, in a particular area of a country. It may be that of a particular group of people, political group, etc., or in a region. Set of beliefs, belief system. Now, what we believe in Sri Lanka may be different from what Indians believe, and what Americans believe may be different from what Indians and Sri Lankans believe. So their belief systems are different, and those belief systems are known as ideologies. So we usually talk about political ideology because there are different way of thinking in different political groups and ideologies. For instance, the Marxist ideology, socialist ideology, and capitalist ideology they differ from one another. So an ideology is a relative concept. It is relative. It is not one particular meaning. It is relative to another. It is understood in relation to another ideology. So, for instance, now we can say Asian ideology versus European ideology. And then we can say Eastern ideology versus Western ideology, East West. And then Marxist ideology versus capitalist ideology. Karl Marx system of governance, that was Marxism, and then capitalism. Then democratic ideology versus autocratic ideology. Now, in our countries, we have a democratic system. Now, there are other countries which have autocratic systems where there's a king or an autocrat ruling the country. So we also used to have autocratic system in Sri Lanka before we came under the British, and when after that the democratic system was introduced. So we had kings those days. So autocratic system, autocratic ideology versus democratic ideology. These are binary oppositions. These are binary oppositions. This term is important. Please make a note of it. Binary opposition, that will recur during my lecture. Or we call them dichotomies, or in other words, dualities. Binary opposition, binary means two things, one opposing the other. They are in pairs, one opposing the other. The best example is rich versus poor. So that is an example, simple example for a binary opposition, rich versus poor. And then white versus black, ugly versus beautiful, 1 versus 0. So those are binary oppositions. Pakistan versus India. Right? You also call the technical term dichotomies or dualities, dichotomies. So these are some basic concepts that you have to bear in mind is in order to understand at least some of what I'll be talking during this lecture. And then another important term is culture. What do you understand by the term culture? Now, this is a very evasive term. People talk about Sanskriti, culture and all that, but still, if somebody asks, okay, what is culture? What is Sanskriti? Many people find it difficult to explain culture, Sanskriti, because it embraces a lot of other areas. Now, we can't just pinpoint and show, okay, this is culture. Now, all the knowledge and values shared by a society or a community is the definition of culture. All the knowledge and values shared by a society or a community. So, it is a collection of knowledge and values commonly shared by a particular society or a particular community, and that is culture. So there are lots of things in common. So you can't just pinpoint and say. Now, for instance, language, religion, traditions of a particular set of people, values, dress, how we wear, what we wear, the manner in which we walk, tools that we use, particular way of life that we have, geographical areas, like the culture is different from area to area. When you go to Dambana, that's a different culture. When you go to Kandy, that's a Kandian culture. Then when you go to Anuradhapura, Ulnaru areas, that's a different culture, so agricultural kind of a society. So culture also depends on geographical areas where people live. So all this put together, we understand as culture. So the culture may be like at larger level, you can have Western culture, Eastern culture. Now, when we say Western culture, all the Western countries, whatever the things that they have in common culturally, so we can identify as Western culture. And Asian culture, Asia has a lot of countries, something that is commonly shareable amongst those nations is called Asian culture. So likewise, when you come down, even at small levels like village levels also, there can be different cultures. And school culture. In one particular school, the culture is different. Now, royal culture is different from another culture, Nalanda culture, etc. So you may know because you have been students in different schools. And university culture is different from school culture, right? And even amongst our own faculties, faculty of medicine may have a different culture from the faculty of management. So those are cultural differences. Now, culture is also, again, a relative concept, therefore. So we can talk about, like in the case of ideologies, we can talk about our culture versus their culture, Asian culture versus European culture, Eastern culture versus Western culture, Sinhalese culture versus Tamil culture, Buddhist versus Islamic culture, civilian versus civilian culture versus military culture. Now, you've been in a defense university. There are civilians as well as military people. They are in two different cultural worlds. Although we are living in the same university, studying the same university, working in same classes, culturally we have differences. Right. Now, still, I'm talking about the basic concept. So, Asian ideology versus Western ideology. Now, we are moving on to the Asian ideology. To understand Asian ideology, we talk about it in comparison to Western ideology. This is a dichotomy or a binary opposition or a duality. We cannot understand Asian ideology if we don't understand Western ideology. Similarly, Western ideology is understood in comparison to Asian ideology. So, our topic of the whole project is cultural linkages towards an Asian ideology. That is the main topic. Now, Asian ideology cannot be discussed without its binary opposition of Western ideology or Eurocentric thinking. I call it Eurocentric thinking. Western ideology is Eurocentric thinking, that is Europe. Center is the Europe. Thinking is surrounded, at the center, Europe is there. The thinking is, as per the way Europeans think, right? Now, ironically, we cannot share Asian cultural linkages towards an Asian ideology without the common language that we are using today, that is English. Now, isn't that ironic? We are talking about an Asian cultural linkages and Asian culture, but we are using as the tool to discuss about it a language that is English. Why? We do not have a common language in Asia to talk about. If we did not have English, of course, we cannot even imagine how Asian countries would, unite and talk about their cultural linkages. So this is a very ironic situation. So now the question arises whether the English language is theirs means the Europeans, or ours. මේක ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ භාෂාවක්ද අපේ භාෂාවක් කියන ප්‍රශ්නේ පරණයි. Thus, the significance of the role of the English language in establishing cultural linkages towards an Asian ideology. I think you can understand the significance, the importance of talking about the English language in establishing cultural linkages towards an Asian ideology, if at all we are going to do it. Right. Now I'm moving on to the second topic that I have planned to discuss. Imperialist project and the English language. Imperialist project and the English language. Now, what is imperialism? Imperialism is like the term colonization. You may know that our imperial masters were the British, the Queen. So imperial, royal, British, we were under the British. So imperialist project, having other countries under one umbrella as colonies of the British. So that is the imperialist project. Now, in that project, the English language played a dominant role. So therefore, I would like to discuss with you once again a little bit on the origin of the English language. How did this come? How did this language begin? Whether it is a totally alien language to us or it has some relationship with us. Now, originally, it was a West Germanic language. When you say West Germanic, you may understand that it had come from West Germany. Germanic language brought into Britain by Germanic invaders, like the way the British, the Portuguese, the Dutch invaded Sri Lanka, India, etc. German people invaded the British Isles, and then as a result came the Germanic language into the British Isles. So, but this Germanic language belongs to what is called Indo-European language family. Now, you must learn that there are language families, and originally it belonged to Indo-European language families. Now, you can see that there was the relationship, there had been a relationship between Europe and Indo means Indian subcontinent, Indian and Europe. And then there is a relationship, distant relationship. Now, this West Germanic language was related to Vedic Indo-Aryan family of languages, what is called Indo-Aryan language family. Aryan, Iran and all these areas, we belong to Indo-Aryan family. So these languages descended, now all these Indo-Aryan family languages descended from a hypothetical proto-language. Don't be frightened by these terms, right? Hypothetical proto-language. That is, proto means like kind of a imaginary language, hypothetical language that is supposed to have existed thousands of years ago. We don't know, but linguists and those who have studied anthropology, they have found out that there must have been an original language from which all other languages have descended. Now, this thousands of years ago, there had been only one language from which all the other languages have been later on derived. That is the theory. So now, as per the Indo-European studies, That is the field of linguistics. Linguistics is the study of languages, scientific study of languages. And this is an interdisciplinary field of study on Indo-European languages, both current and extinct. Now, some languages that have gone dead. Now, even those languages, they study, and the current languages also they study. So, having studied them, they find that there must have been an original language that is called proto-language. Right. Um, so now Asian ideology. Now, I'm going back to that basic concepts and things for a while. Asian ideology versus Western ideology. No, this is the slide that I had discussed already. Yeah, right. Now, you can see in this chart the Indo-European family of languages that has descended from that proto-language. That is called Indo-European family, about 3,500 to 3,000 years BC, before Christ. Now see that there are Indian, Armenian, Iranian, Germanic, Baltic, Slavic, etc. There are certain set of languages, and you can see with this green line, Germanic languages. Then from there, you can just follow the green line, East Germanic, then West Germanic, and from West Germanic, High German, Low German, and then from there, Anglo-Saxon, that is the Old English. Anglo-Saxon means Old English that had come from through Germanic invaders to Britain. So then that developed into Middle English and Modern English in between 1700, that is 18th century to 19th century. During that period, Modern English has developed. It has developed into what is called Modern English, and the origin, of course, had been a Germanic language thousands of years ago. Now, the important thing is, like you can see on the extreme left, Indian languages. Now, Indian languages, you can see Sanskrit, Middle Indian, and then you can see at the bottom Hindustani, Bengali, and other modern Indian languages, which includes Sinhalese as well. So you can see a relationship between English and Sinhalese, and even other languages like Hindustan, etc., all these Indian languages, and there is a distant relationship. Right. Now, imperialist project and the English language. What is this imperialist project? The imperial masters, the British, capturing countries like ours, and then spreading their language, their culture, and their power, their authority over these countries. And that is the imperialist project. And we'll see how the English language is related to that one. Now, the English language was expanded throughout the world during this, through this imperialist project. Now, there's what is called first diaspora and second diaspora. You may have heard the word diaspora because of Tamil diaspora living in other countries, especially in Western countries. People who have left Sri Lanka, the Tamil people, now they have settled down there. They are called Tamil diaspora. In large numbers of people, when they have left and settled down elsewhere, you identify that by that diaspora. So this first diaspora is not Tamil diaspora, but English diaspora. Now, the European expansion through trade and explorations. Now, they went around the world for trade and explorations. The various explorers like Vasco da Gama, etc. That was the order of the day. They went looking for other countries, exploration, looking for countries, identifying countries, etc. And then that is how Ibn Battuta, etc. And that is how they found America, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Canada, West Indies, etc. So they are large-scale migrations. Then they went and captured America in the 17th century. They sent their underworld people, the prisoners, to Australia in the 18th century. That is why we call it down under. All these when in England they found that their prisons were full, what they did was to send the prisoners in a ship to this particular country, Australia. And then they subjugated the aborigines there, and then they established as one of their countries. Then the New Zealand in the 19th century, South Africa in the 19th century, Canada, West Indies, etc. And these people have the English language as a first language variety. First language variety, that is, they are native speakers of English because they went in large numbers. So that is why America, they have American English. Australia, they have Australian English, etc. Still, they are native speakers. They don't have any other language. Now, then, as against the first diaspora, then the second diaspora is through colonization. So that is a part of the imperialist project, colonization. What is to colonize? To capture other countries and make them a part of their colonies. So Sri Lanka is one of their colonies, was rather. Now, in the second half of the 18th century, they came to this area, South Asia, and then they captured India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, East African countries, and all these countries. Their English language became the second language varieties. So English as a second language. Now we have Sinhala, Tamil as our first languages, and English is a second language. So India has hundreds of other languages, native languages, and in addition to that, they have English as a second language. So all these former colonies have English as a second language. There is a difference. Then the imperialist project continues. Now we are going to talk about the expansion of the English language. Now, the British influence in Southeast Asia, South Pacific is seen in the late 18th century, and countries like Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Papua New Guinea got the expansion. The English language expanded to these countries also in the 18th century, although they were not colonies. Now, American influence on Southeast Asia, that of course came a little late, but spread fast. Now in Philippines, you have the American influence. Because of the American influence, the English language was spread there. So it also spread to neighboring countries like Taiwan, Japan, Korea, etc. So they were not colonies, but later expansions. Now, now that was the imperialist period. Now, colonial period, English language was spread, but in the post-colonial Asia, English language, now we are going to talk about post-colonial Asia. Post-colonial means after the colonization, that means after independence. Now in 1948 we got independence, in 1949 India got independence, and after independence, that is post-colonial Asia. There is a difference from there. Now earlier, of course, it was the language, they governed us, and that their language was the main language, so we were the underdogs. Now, even after colonial period, in the post-colonial area, English language still had its power. Because it was the language of the rulers, the queen's language, and the political rulers, the leaders who took over power were English educated people in the country. So therefore, still the English language was dominant. Language for the governance and administration. Still, the governance, how the government was run, administration was run through the English language. So it was the language for education. Mainstream education was given in English until 1956, where Mr. S.W.R.D. Bandaranaike came and made a change, converting Sinhala as the first official language. So, so that was language of judiciary. In courts, it was the language used, language of the upper classes, and also this was a very dominant, powerful tool for the upper class people. There were different social classes based on whether you know English or not. So those who knew English, those who were English educated, they were upper class, and they were the upper class, and then non-English educated people were treated as lower class. So there was a class consideration coming in. So now the dichotomies continue. Dichotomies, dualities, binary oppositions that I introduced at the beginning, they continue. English educated upper class of natives versus vernacular, means local language educated underdogs. So the English educated upper class, local Sinhala and Tamil educated underdogs in Sri Lanka. Now, powerful English language versus powerless native language. Native language is powerless. So that is a binary opposition. Superior English language versus inferior native languages. So these binary oppositions still continued in this language domain because of the English language as well. So now, still we are in this imperialist project, right? Now, East-West dichotomy. Now, dichotomy means duality. Validating ground for imperialism and Western hegemony. Imperialism and Western hegemony. Hegemony means, dominating over others. So, West dominated East. Now, the validating ground, the reason to, dominate, why people believe that, okay, the West should govern the East, is because of these ideas that they created and generated and maintained. So, what is this? These are dichotomies, right? Powerful West and powerless East. So, these were created, these ideas were created, ideologies were created in the minds of people. West is powerful, East is powerless. Cultured West, uncultured East. Civilized West, uncivilized East. Nugat ASEAN. Educated West, uneducated East. Sophisticated West and unsophisticated East. Normal and familiar West and exotic and strange East. East is exotic, very strange. Amutu menisu inne, weddu inne, bulatida kanne, amudaga that kind of attitude. So in the West, they wear the European dress, the tie coat and all that. So that is, classy. So that kind of comparison. Superior culture and inferior culture. So in the West, they said their culture is superior, and in the East, the inferior culture is inferior. So rich West and poor East. But only the reality is that they plundered the riches of Asian and African countries, the gems, and all the valuable things from our part of the world were taken by them. Right. So by the mid 20th century, the South Asian countries, including Sri Lanka, gained independence from the British Empire. In 1948, we got independence. Yet the cultural hegemony or dominance continues through the institutions created during the colonial era. Now, you see, although we got the freedom, was it a full freedom? No. Why? Cultural dominance continued. Why? Because they had their systems in place, democratic governance system, judicial system, Naduhanakrame, all that, education system. They had changed fully, and through those institutions, they had created a system where they could control from being there. We were given independence, but still we were not independent because they had their ropes there. They could control. So colonial era, they had set up everything, and even after they left, their system ran. So English education, democratic governance system, English legal system, administrative system, English customs and traditions adopted by the ruling elite, and poor people, the villagers, etc. They were looking up to the elite, the ruling people, the rich people, business community. They were looking up to them, and they also wanted to be like them, right? And they wanted to follow them and wear their dress. Now, during our childhood, we did not see many people wearing trousers in villages. Only the sarong clad guys could be seen. So it was later on that the trousers were spread all over the country, and that is because now people yearned to, they wanted to be dressed like Western people, and that is because they thought that is the, better cultured way of doing things, right? So English language assumes a new role in the British Commonwealth. Now there, English language after that, after independence, little by little, English language began to assume a new role in the British Commonwealth. Now, because the language was there, they could control from there. Now, this English language supports the continuation of the Western hegemony in Asia. බටහිර අධිපතිවාදයේ ආසියාවේ පවත්වාගෙන යන්නට උදව් වුණේ සිංහල ඉංග්‍රීසි භාෂාව. Natives believe in their inferiority compared to the West. Still, there are people who believe that okay, West is superior and East is inferior. There are reasons to think like that also even today, as for the things that are happening, right? So the English language remained as what is called kadua, the sword, the symbol of oppression in the disoriented psyche of the natives until perhaps the beginning of the 21st century. 21st century, that means Dedahim Passe, Dedahata Isalla, before 2000. Still, this English was feared by many people. They talked of it as kadua. I can remember as a young man, a young boy, people used to say kaddadano, kaduadano. Now in your age, you don't hear that often, because when somebody speaks English, that is to suppress somebody. And those who don't know English, they were sidelined. So that was used as a symbol of oppression, especially before 21st century. So meanwhile, though, Asian cultures that in effect were much older remained on stone inscriptions and ola leaf books. Now remember, Asian cultures were much richer compared to the Western culture thousands of years ago. And there you can go to Sigiriya and all these inscriptions and ola leaf books where you have a lot of important knowledge, very old knowledge, and some of the books had been burnt years back, even before the Westerners came because of Indian influence. And so there had been a lot of education, culture, which had been very, very old in our parts of the world. So still they are on stone inscriptions and ola leaf books. So English language in post-colonial Asia. Now, as I said, English was considered as Kaduwa, the symbol of oppression. Now, gradually, English began to be developed as regional varieties or world Englishes of their own identity. So there is a change in the perspective of the English language being used. Now, earlier it was a symbol of oppression, language of the hegemonizers or the colonizers. So now, new trend for world Englishes to develop. Now we have what is called today Sri Lankan English, Indian English, African English, etc. Now they have their own right. I mean, they stand up and say, okay, we speak Sri Lankan English. Nobody's afraid to say we're speaking Sri Lankan English. But when we were young, we used to hear that, okay, the best English is British English, and we must try to learn British English, and then American English, next one. So today, people do not have that attitude. Now, these languages, world Englishes, we call them, are used as the language of the now, before that, it was used as the upper class elite language or the tool of education. Now, it has become a part of our own cultures. It has become a part of our own cultures. Now, it is used as the lingua franca, that is a link language, intra-language, language amongst different communities. Now, the Muslim, Tamil, Sinhala communities use English as the intra-language, so link language, right? So within different nationalities and among other nations in Asia and the rest of the world. Now we can talk with Japanese because we know English. If some Japanese know English, we can communicate. So now with China, how do we communicate? With English. Now with India, Pakistan, all these countries, we communicate because this English language is there. But it is not British English or American English or whatever. There are commonalities, but still there is a variation. So we use what is called international English. Now, one man who was very significant and who did a very significant role in analyzing this is a man called Raj B. Kachru. He developed a model of world Englishes. He mentioned that there are three circles: inner circle, outer circle, and expanding circle. So in the inner circle, he represents, now if it is one center and there are different circles, the native speakers are in the inner circle: UK, USA, Australia, New Zealand, Anglophone Canada, South Africa, some Caribbean territories. There are native speakers of English, and that is called that is identified as inner circle, and they provide norm, the norm, the grammar and all that. So they are called norm providing nations, norm providers. And then there is that is called outer circle, norm developing. Now in our areas like former colonies, as English as a second language, as lingua franca, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, African countries, etc. We are developing our norms of the language, English language. It is still English, but we talk about Sri Lankan English, Indian English, etc. Then there is what is called expanding circle, non-dependent. They depend on norms set by others. Because they don't have any historical or governmental role, they are mainly learned for international communication as a second language, as a foreign language rather. So countries like China, Japan, Russia, Nepal, South Korea, Egypt, non-Anglophonic Europe, Russian countries, etc. These countries they learn English, they teach English in order to ensure that there is a mode, a method, instrument for international communication. So they are norm dependent. Now these circles like Ashru, they indicate inner circle, outer circle, and expanding circle. So 380 million speakers in the inner circle and 150 to 300 million in the outer circle. So there are a large number of people in the outer circle speaking different varieties of English. And then many in the expanding circle also. The same thing in a different way. This is Kashbu, that man. He's an Indian. Three concentric circles that he has developed. So English is classified as native language, second language, foreign language. Native language in the inner circle, second language in the outer circle, foreign language in the middle circle, then outer circle you have norm-dependent circle, so English as a foreign language. So when you talk about learning English also, there are differences. We learn English as a native language, as a second language. In Sri Lanka, we teach English as a second language for education, etc. International, intercultural relationships, we have that. We call it lingua franca. Right. Now, so far I have been discussing about the English language, its evolution from the ancient times and during the colonial time, that is imperialist time, and during the post-colonial time, how it evolved and how its influence changed over years. Now, finally, at the time we stopped, we discussed that it has now become a kind of a world English, where countries have their own independence as far as English language is concerned, usage is concerned. So more than a symbol of oppression, Kaduwa, now it is a tool that is used for education and for various purposes. Now, we will now have a look at how literature is related to culture and cultural dominance. Now, as you know, what is literature? Now, you can talk about literature. Now, when you do research also, we gather literature, but this is not that literature I'm talking about. Sahitya, right? In that sense, the books, the short stories, poetry, etc. There is a big relationship between literature and culture. Now, it is an expression of culture because it documents human knowledge, belief, and behavior through books, novels, etc. We record or document human knowledge and human behavior and human beliefs. Through the characters that we read, we get to know about such things. So there is an oral tradition where stories we've heard stories from our parents, grandparents, etc., and that comes down from generation to generation. The oral tradition of literature and the written tradition in writing books. So storytelling helps the continuation of beliefs, traditions, way of thinking in short culture. So storytelling is a very dominant tool for the continuation of culture and continuation of certain ideologies, etc. So English literature also became a part of cultural hegemony in the colonial era. Cultural hegemony means dominance. Now, culturally, they dominated us. Our cultures were suppressed, and literature was one of the tools. Now, it continued in the post-colonial era as well. Now, there's all these English novels, English poetry, etc. They dominated our cultures. Even in the post-colonial era, that is after independence, that continued. Now, There is what is called post-colonial literatures, or what is called new literatures. Those who have read a little bit of literature may know about it, but others may not have an idea about it. Don't worry so much about it. Just listen to it and see whether you can grasp something. So the literature by the people from formerly colonized countries. Now, the post-colonial literature means literatures, especially written in English, by people from formerly colonized countries like Sri Lanka, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc., African countries, etc. That is known as post-colonial literatures. Now, these post-colonial literatures address the problems and consequences of the decolonization of a country. You may understand the term decolonization of a country. Now, first the colonization, and after that decolonization. Now, just the independence is not a decolonization. After you become independent also, you have got to decolonize the mindset of people, because still people are colonized in their mindset. As long as they believe that we are under the Queen. See, now after the Queen's death, there are still people mourning Queen's death, because we still have that, tendency to respect and have some kind of fear for the Queen. So our minds are not 100% decolonized, right? So now these new literatures address the problems of and consequences of decolonization of a country. Now, it is not easy. When you decolonize, there are other problems coming up. So especially questions relating to the political and cultural independence of formerly subjugated people. Subjugated යටත් වෙලා හිටපු මිනිසුන්ගේ ඉස්සර cultural independence, සංස්කෘතිකමය කොතරම් නිවහල්ද නිදහස්ද කියන කාරණා, දේශපාලනිකව කොතරම් නිදහස්ද නිවහල්ද කියන කාරණා. So these questions are discussed in these literatures. Now, even to date, people talk about Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is in total disarray now, because we are using an economic system that was brought to us by the West. We are using their education system, we are using all their systems, and still we are not 100% fitting in with their system, so there are clashes and problems. Even the minority issues, the Tamil Sinhala problem, all these are remnants of colonization. So it is not easy to decolonize. So all these problems after independence we are facing. So new literatures dealt with those things. Now they deal with themes such as racialism, colonialism. Those are the themes that are dealt in new literatures. Now, literary theories too evolved around the role of literature in perpetuating or continuing and challenging cultural imperialism. So literary theories were evolved. Now, questioning cultural imperialism. Although they are not politically ruling us, culturally they are ruling us. And literary theorists like, there is who is called Edward Said, not Said. Edward Said, he is a post-colonial critic. He wrote a very important book called Orientalism in 1978, Orientalism. But just note this thing, Orientalism by Edward Said, note it, and one day you might, feel like, reading what he has said. So he critiques, questions the Eurocentric cultural imperialism, Eurocentric cultural imperialism, European center karagatta cultural imperialism. So he describes and critiques the West's portrayal of the East. Now, Westerners, they write books, they write stories where they portray our part of the world in a different way. And this Edward Said questions them, critiques them. The Western people write about the East like they call it Orient. the Asia, North Africa and Middle East countries. In these countries, now there are certain novels identified as Orientalist works. Orientalist works. The two best examples that I can find is one. You can just note it one day and you can read it and see. E.M. Forster's Passage to India. Some of you may have heard or some of you may have read. Passage to India in 1924. E.M. Forster, he is a British, and he wrote about India, Passage to India. And that is a Orientalist book, and they are looking at Asia from their perspective. And then there is a famous book, it's written in Sri Lanka, The Village in the Jungle. Some of you may have read it, The Village in the Jungle, by Leonard Woolf. He was a government agent, a white man. In 1913, he wrote this book, The Village in the Jungle. Translated into Sinhala as Baddegama. There was a film also acted by the main role being acted by Kithsiri Amaratunga, and even Joe Abevikrama was in the baboon's role. And they were like continuing the story that, you know, these natives are uneducated, uncultured, and all that sort of, you know, things are associated with natives, and they are comparing themselves, educated people, with these uneducated locals. Okay? So what is the idea behind it? They continued the story, and then to maintain the hegemony, their strength, their power, their authority, everything. Right now, this in Orientalism, Edward Said questions them. Right. So another important work is Empire Writes Back. Empire Writes Back in 1989 by Bill Ashcroft, Gareth Griffiths, and Helen Tiffin in Australia. They wrote this Empire Writes Back. These are two seminal works, very important books. Maybe you are following medicine, following engineering, doesn't matter. Just make a note of it. One day you might get a chance to read this and understand what they are. Today you may not understand that is right, what it is. So this is Empire Writes Back is a very radical critique of Eurocentric notions. Very radical critique, questioning of Eurocentric notions of language and literature. Language and literature. So it investigates how the post-colonial texts constitute a radical critique of Eurocentric notions of literature and language. So then Empire Writes Back means the people from the old empire, new generation of people started writing back. Now, they were the storytellers earlier. Now, Western people, now our Indians, Sri Lankans, Africans started writing their story from their angle. And those, especially Indian writers like R.K. Narayan, Mulk Raj Anand, Raja Rao, African writers like Chinua Achebe, they portrayed the rich local cultures through the English language. So the English language was used to show the richness of our local cultures of Asian nations, and how rich they were culturally. And that was a portrayal from the people of these nations, written in the English language. So their language being used to portray our cultures. So this R.K. Narayan, he has written Malgudi Days and all these stories. One of the novels I translated recently and published as Rasa Kavali Vilinda, R.K. Narayan's The Winter of Sweets, that was made as a KDU publication. Some of you may have heard about it. So these are really nice storytellings in the English language, showing that we also have equal or better cultural strengths. Now we are moving on to another area, globalization and the role of the English language. Now we are in a globalized world, we say. People say, talk about globalization. Now everywhere it is globalization, globalization. So whole world is one and, no differences and all that. So the question is whether it is true. Now, how do we define globalization? Uh, so when there is a growth to a global or worldwide scale, we talk about growth to global or worldwide scale, and we talk about economic globalization, cultural globalization. Culturally, we are just one, the whole world, political globalization, and etc., etc. But there is a question: is it the continuation of the economic, cultural, and political hegemony of the West? Is it another way used to continue the cultural hegemony, economic hegemony, political hegemony of the West? Because we talk about globalization, but still our parts of the world, these developing countries are still underdogs, and they are controlling the economy. The powerful, maybe the West, maybe the East, economically powerful nations control the world. Hegemony is maintained. So someone might question, although we talk about globalization, is it equality for everybody? Is it? That is a question. So this globalization speeded up with advancements of ICT, computer technology, information and computer technology, and modern technologies in the 21st century. So you can be anywhere in the world, but you can just in a matter of few seconds you can communicate with anybody in the world, etc. So these are good things. So English language plays a significant role in globalization as well. Now see the link of the English language in globalization. Now it has become the tool for communication, not as a clear symbol of power and status to dominate, but now it is used for technological advancements and knowledge sharing. Now we use the internet and we get knowledge from anywhere through the internet, through the English language. Now it has become a real tool for us to get knowledge and to be aware of the world and what is happening around the world. Now this we use it for discussion and even propagation of non-European values. Now the values of the East, values of the Africans could be propagated through this medium. We have the English language on the one hand, and we have the Internet of Things, ICT facilities. So with that, we can reach the world. Now, this has become a common language for the whole world. Now, from English, that was the language of the dominant West, the imperial masters. Now it has become the language of the common man in the whole world. See the change that has taken place over the years. Now you can see the languages being used on the internet now. 55.7 usage in the internet is English, and Chinese 3.3, Spanish 4.3. All the other languages are very, very minimal in the as far as English language is concerned. That is the highest. So the number of users also, the English language has the highest number of usage in the world. Right. Now with that, we move on to another aspect, that is Pan-Asianism versus Eurocentrism. Now, before the independence, even after the independence, pre and post-colonial era, we were talking about Eurocentrism. World was moving around Europe, and they were controlling everything. And then there was a discussion about what is called Pan-Asianism. That means Pan-Asianism means only Asian Asian ideology, Pan-Asian ideology. Now we are also talking in the main theme, Asian ideology, cultural linkages towards an Asian ideology. Now here, this Pan-Asian ideology is different from that. Now this is an ideology um, that came up as against Euro-American dominance. So this is against that one. Another dichotomy, another binary opposition. As against Euro-American dominance, some Asian nations wanted to get together and react to it in the globalized world by developing what is called Pan-Asian ideology, right? So to be equal or to fight against the dominance of Euro-American dominance. Now, this was led by countries such as Malaysia, Singapore, Japan, South Korea. Now, when you hear the list, you can see now these are countries in Asian countries who are economically sound today. Malaysia, Singapore, Japan, South Korea, etc. It attempts to identify common Asian customs and values. Now, this Pan-Asian ideology is an attempt to identify common Asian customs and values, particularly through Confucian values. Confucius, you may have heard, you can read up a little bit, Confucian values. Using them, they want to find some common thing about Asian values as against European values. So this is a cultural and political ideology which defines elements of social norms, ethical values, traditional customs, belief systems, artifacts, and technologies common to the nations of Southeast Asia and East Asia, both historically and presently. So this is an attempt to do that. Find a common core of traditions, beliefs, artifacts, etc., technologies, etc. Right. Now, the basic commonality of collectivism is used to unify people for their economic and social good and to create a Pan-Asian identity. So, commonality of collectivism as opposed to individualism in the West. Now, West ideals are more or less individualistic. Tani පුද්ගල මේ තමයි තියෙන්නේ. බටහිර ලෝකයේ තනි පුද්ගලයාගේ අයිතිවාසිකම්, rights of individual freedom, those are the things that they concentrate on. So that is considered incompatible, not matching with the Asian region. They thought, Pan-Asian ideologists thought that ours is the collectivism is the main thing. People unify together. People work together as groups, etc. However, Pan-Asian ideology is yet another binary opposition, a dichotomy against an Euro-American ideology or their hegemony in the globalized world. So to fight that hegemony, we have another one, Pan-Asian ideology. So Pan-Asian ideology versus Euro-American ideology is another dichotomy. Right. Now, having discussed all these differences and difficulties, now we are coming down to commonality of cultures and ideologies. Whether it is Western or whether it is Eastern, we shall try and see whether there are any commonalities in cultures and ideologies. So as against cultural disharmony, we will look at another dichotomy, whether it is possible to have another dichotomy, cultural disharmony versus cultural harmony. Now, cultural differences may be there, but despite differences, instead of disharmony, whether we can have cultural harmony, togetherness, right? Can we identify any common feature and unbroken strand in the usage of language and literature throughout this historical progression? And cultural and ideological battles in the world in about 5 centuries of time span of our histories? We cannot. We cannot identify anything that will tie up together. The answer is the diverse cultural identities and diverse ideologies used for division, separation, conflicts, domination, suppression, oppression, and for all the negative things that our world has been experiencing. Now, that is what has been happening over the last 500 to 1,000 years. Cultural identities were diverse, ideologies were diverse, and it is only division within Gatin, Matagatum, Anikek Paraya, Anikek Negisitim, Yatapatkirim, or again negative through these all these dichotomies and cultural identities. Right. Now, it is a continuation of humanity through superiority and inferiority complexes developed through dichotomies of cultural identities and ideologies. The mentally constructed unreal realities. I repeat, mentally constructed unreal realities. Are we truly facing the realities? Are they real? And they are mentally constructed inferiority complexes and superiority complexes, hinamana, uchamana, created by people on various grounds, cultural grounds, religious grounds, ideologies, etc. Right. Now, if we understand the true nature of these binary oppositions, if you understand that they are in a continuous flux or change all the time, the true nature is that, the real nature is that all these are continuously changing. They are in a flux, we say, continuous flux. Nothing is permanent. Everything is changing. The countries that were dominating years ago are no more. Now the Roman Empire, they talked about Roman Empire. Now there is no Roman Empire. Then the British Empire, no British Empire now, right? So all these, come and go. Now the dominance of America is also being challenged now, like countries like China. So things are changing. Now there are prognostications that India will be the next power. So things are changing over the years, although we don't see it during our own lifetime. So we, the Asians, and they, the Europeans, could genuinely respect different cultural identities and ideologies in complementary relationship. Now, if we can be the Asians and they, the Europeans and Americans, if they could genuinely respect different cultural identities and ideologies in contemporary relationships or for mutual respect, then the result would be different. The result would be compassion, daya, respect, garute, tolerance, ivasima, anai ivasima, understanding, avbodhe, loving kindness, karmika, adarani, daya, black versus white ideology versus black and white ideology. So far, we have been talking about black versus white ideology, one fighting the other. Now we can talk about, if we use these things, compassion, respect, tolerance, understanding, loving kindness, etc., black and white ideology, that black and white coming together, and that will make it a richly beautiful culture. West and East together, how strong would it be? Now, problem and solution. Now, is Pan-Asian ideology a solution, or is it a temporary alternative? I believe that it does not touch upon the deeper nuances of fundamental Asian values of unconditional compassion, loving kindness to all beings, simplicity, equality, and equanimity. These are at the heart of Asian identities. And Pan-Asian ideology is a kind of a business requirement, that is an economic requirement. So that does not go deeper into what we Asians are good for. And so these values are found in Asian philosophies like in the pristine Buddha Dhamma, which shows the negativity of dualistic thinking, dichotomous thinking, binary opposition thinking. Buddhist pristine Buddha Dhamma, it is not Buddhism, it is not anything against any other religion, Christianity or Islam or whatever. It is Dhamma, which is common to the whole world, which shows the negativity of dualistic thinking, at the root of which exists raga. What is raga? The mental attachment with liking, raga, raging, and then a mental attachment with liking, and dvesha or dosa, mental attachment with dislike. Now, those two things are at the root of everything when these dichotomous differences come up. Now, they constitute the root causes for all conflicts in human existence, root causes for all conflicts in human existence, raga and dvesha. Now, in conclusion, I propose that we in Sri Lanka share with most Asian nations some of the above attributes like loving kindness, etc., irrespective of differences in religions, whether we are Christians, Hindus, Islamics, Buddhists, irrespective of those differences, we share something common because at the base of our cultures lie these values that are distinctly identifiable from those of the West. In the West, those values are not very dominantly visible. So this, I believe, would pave us the path for an Asian ideology that does not compete or fight against Western ideology. Instead, it will serve as an alternative ideology that anyone, anywhere could share, as an ideology that propagates peace and harmony among people and nations anywhere in the world. That will be a universal ideology that can be passed on through the medium of the international language of English, remember. Now, that is the importance of English. Now, if we did not have English, of course, we would never be able to talk about this as well. So, using this international language of English as the only language commonly shared by most countries in the world, which I believe is the new role of the English language in the 21st century, which I believe is the new role of the English language in the 21st century. And we, the Asians, are grateful to the West for providing us the common link, the English language, although it came as a symbol of oppression, for hegemony and all that at the beginning. Now it has developed into such a beautiful tool that could be used to propagate peace in the world. I thank you. Uh, because now I should once again, until you ask questions, I should thank Dr. Hemantha Premratna and the Social Sciences Department, the HOD, Mr. Herath, etc., for organizing such a wonderful thing and such a wonderful opportunity, having contacts with the Japanese authorities and One Asia Foundation, etc. So this is not easy thing to get. So having had such an opportunity, this is a result of that relationship. So we should link up with the world, and we should see what the changes that are taking place in the world, irrespective of disciplinary differences. අපි මේ පොඩි කොටු ප්‍රාණ වලට කොටු වෙලා පුතේ අපි මෙඩිසින් අපි ඉංජිනේරින් අපි IT ICT අපි මේ කිය වෙන් වෙලා ඉන්න එක නෙවෙයි අපි පුළුල් පරාශාල වලට යන්න ඕනේ අපේ දැනුම වර්ධනය කර ගන්න ඕනේ විවිධ දේවල් ගැන දැන කියා ගන්න ඕනේ නිකම් මේ රස්සාවක් කරන් විතරක් ඉගෙන ගන්නව වෙන්න බෑ so you must develop in these lines that is the idea of having this kind of program so we wish that you make some use of it at least get some idea and so later on you can develop on these lines as well. Any questions? There is one question. Do you think at one point the people's minds will ever be decolonized? Now, Buddha, this is nothing is permanent. I told you at the beginning, at the end, that everything is in flux, changing. That is the only thing that is not changing. So, yeah. Now we are not. I mean, as colonized as we were 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 25 years ago. People are getting liberated and freed, and sometimes we might become the colonizers one day. You never know. In which case we will be colonizing others, and then others will have to decolonize themselves. Yeah, nothing is impossible.
Sir, this is Tirani. I have a question. So recently, Shrihan Karuna Tilaka won the Booker Prize. So how do you think, our literature going to the world, like that will help with this?
Yeah. So Empire writes back. You see. So that is great. Empire writes back. Now see. Now this Booker Prize was the second to win the Booker Prize. Shrihan Karuna Tilaka. Yeah. So before that, Michael Ondaatje won the Booker Prize. But there is one thing, Tirani, that I'm a little concerned now. These Booker Prizes are given by, once again, the West. That is their measurements, their judgments. Now, if and when things are in their line of thinking, perhaps what they want is given by our people. Sometimes they may give prizes, and sometimes they may see them. I don't know. I haven't read this particular book. Until such time, I can't say anything. But sometimes, now, like Salman Rushdie, now he was given the Booker Prize. So when they want something that they want our people to come out with, sometimes they give prizes and all that. It's not just the prizes, but people understanding that we are rising against other this thing, and we are having our own say, our own words, and all that. And that is standing on our own feet. Yeah, that's a good question. I'm eager to read that book.
Yes, it's supposed to be interesting. And sir, so like Arundhati Roy's God of Small Things, it won the Booker Prize, right? But it's a very strong critique of colonization, isn't it?
Yeah. Arundhati Roy, yes, I agree. Yes. So that was like, yeah. So you see now what happens is like when they are critiquing colonization, sometimes they wouldn't get their prizes. You wouldn't get it, but the people's prize is there. So that is more valuable than the prize given by them.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Anything else? If there are no other questions, the time is 5:05. So I would like to conclude once again, thanking everybody, Dr. Hemantha, Mr. Nuan Herat, and the team Social Sciences Department, and also Tirani, Vijay Vikrama, the project assistant, for being there. Thank you, all of you. Hope that you have got some little idea about these things on which you can read later and enrich your knowledge if you want. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So before we end, I have a small vote of thanks prepared. So let me begin. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks on behalf of the students of the short course on cultural linkages towards an Asian ideology. First, I would like to thank our lecturer, Mr. Kithsiri Amaratunga, for sharing his time and knowledge with us and for delivering today's lecture amidst his busy schedule. Sir, we are blessed to have you contribute to this course. Next, I wish to thank Dr. Hemanta Premaratne and other staff of KDU who have brought these lectures together. Thank you. Last but not least, I thank all participants from our university for joining us today. Your participation has made this lecture a successful event, and I believe it has provided you with an insight into the role of English language in Asia. To conclude, let me once more express my gratitude to Mr. Kithsiri Amaratunga for accepting our invitation for the third consecutive year
Thank you.
and delivering today's lecture. Sir, it's an honor to have you with us, and your time and efforts are deeply appreciated. Before we end, I kindly request all students to switch on your cameras in order to take a group photograph. Thank you.